What's good, y'all? Lonnie Taylor here, and I'm about to share with you guys my artist story, which actually starts right here. Well, not here specifically, but here. I posted on my social media and I said, hey, I'm redoing the Scrabble tiles for my family wall, and everybody hopped on the post and said, oh my God, that's so cool. How can I get some? Can you make me some? And I said, hey, I'm just doing this for my family. I'm not in the Scrabble tile business. But there was one person who was very persistent and said, well, you better get in business because I want the tiles and I don't really care how much it costs. So I go and do the research and I figure out how much people are charging for these Scrabble tiles, and I was like, okay, this is how much I'll make them for. And she sent me money. And that is how I got into the Scrabble tile business. I went online, did some research, and I saw some guy leave a comment that said, yeah, me and my wife were in the garage working on the scroll saw. So after the research, I ended up here to buy one of those. So I bought my scroll saw, brought it home, and I set it up in my bedroom. My husband came home from work and just shook his head at me because what the hell is she doing now? I then took my scroll saw to the garage, realizing I can't scroll in my bedroom. I do everything in my bedroom. Realizing I can't scroll in my bedroom, I set it up in my garage and I made my first cut. This is actually a Z from my stencils that I was using to make the Scrabble tiles. I suck so bad at scrolling, I went on YouTube and I started watching people scroll. I happened across a woman, I will insert her handle here, who not only was my gender, but she looked like me. So I messaged her and I said, hey, by chance do you teach classes? And she said, actually, I am a teacher who teaches woodshop or scrolling at the school in my area, and I do teach online classes. I signed up for a 2-hour class with her, and this is what I produced. Night and day, right? I'm 100% sure that had I not ran into her, I would not be scrolling anymore. But I know what you're asking. How did I go from this to this? We're getting there. I knew that I wanted to make faces. A couple years back, I bought a bunch of clay and a bunch of clay materials, and I tried to make fairies. Yeah, it was a fail. Fast forward to when we moved into this house, I was experiencing a creative explosion, and I went online and I was watching people DIY and using hot glue to make all these different things, and something clicked in my mind and I said, hey, I wonder if I could make faces out of hot glue. So I went and I bought a hot glue gun and outlined this face and was gonna black girl magic her up, and she ended up in my backyard. Can't even blame the kids. I'm not sure how that piece of art ended up in the backyard. It's no more, that's for sure. After I purchased my scroll saw, I went online and I found the silhouette of this young lady right here. Her name is Maya. And I created my first art collection, the Maya Angelou collection, which features 3 silhouettes and Maya Angelou quotes. But I know you're wondering, how do I go from this to this? I'm getting there. The individual who taught me how to scroll was also members in Scroll Saw face groups, and she advised that I join those groups as well. I joined the Facebook groups, and the first one that I joined was for beginner scrollers. The entire time, I knew that I wanted to make faces. One of the first commissions I worked on was a gift for a woman's husband, and it was a picture of her and her 2 children, and she wanted them to be standing in front of a moon. I could show you better than I could tell you. So I make this piece and it's a silhouette. I want to make people, but I don't know how. That same woman who taught me how to scroll messaged me and she's like, you do know you can cut people up and make the different segments of the people. And I was like, say less, actually, say more. How do I do that? And so inside of these Facebook groups, she tagged me on a video of someone who is segmenting or cutting the pieces up. So instead of this silhouette, I actually have features and body parts. So I cut all the people up, I'm super excited, and I do this piece. So I joined this Facebook group that's centered around newbies and supposed to be support for new scrollers. I'm making a memorial piece for my cousin, and I asked, hey, is there a way that I can make this into a face? And surprisingly, so many people laughed, left laugh emojis, told me I was crazy, I need to abandon the idea, I have the wrong kind of pattern, and what the hell am I thinking? Pretty much it wasn't a very conducive environment for a new scroller. So I left that group pissed off, and I joined another group that's centered for or geared towards female new scrollers. I found a lot of camaraderie there, and I found a female scroller there who became very important in my art story. My connection to that female also gave me another connection to an individual who eventually became one of my main mentors as I learned how to scroll. I was doing a piece of two ladies, a mother and a daughter, standing in front of the New Orleans backdrop, and some guy reached into my DMs and he said, "Hey, I love your work, don't get offended, but I know how you can make it better." That individual then introduced me to the principles of Intarsia. And so I started including the principles in Intarsia in my work, and that's when you'll see my work moving from more or less 2D and more 3D. Chucky is a good example of when I first started doing 3D. He's more recessed into the painting or into the art more than what would be of my pieces today, but he's a great example. The reason why he does have a face is because he's a cartoon. I wasn't afraid to do cartoon faces because they're more animated and they're not necessarily realistic. Like, you really do have a drill in dip nose type, like that's what's going on with cartoons, or you have little slivers cut for the nose. In this time, you'll see me still attempting to make faces and doing the slivers and all those different things, but it still just wasn't working out for me. So I didn't do them. I was continuing to fail, but I was failing forward. Yeah, I know, but how do we get here? Well, not here, she's faceless, but here. We got here because I was posting on my page, "Oh my gosh, I really want to learn how to make faces." And the individual lady that I met in that Scroll Saw group, we have rapport. She messaged me and she said, "I saw how you want to learn how to make faces. Here's somebody on Instagram who makes faces." I sent him a message and I said, "Hey, do you mind pointing me in the direction of the bits that you use, or, any information?" And, we'll just say my message made it to spam because I never heard back from him. But what I did do was study him. At that time, a repeat customer comes to me and she says, "Hey, I'm making my diva reefs, and I usually buy my silhouettes from a craft store, but I would like for you to make me some silhouettes so that they're more interesting to look at." And I said, "Sis, I don't make faces and I can't paint." And she said, "Well, this is how I paint, and I think that you could do a better job than I do." I said, "I'm up for the challenge, so let's give it a go." I make her these 3 silhouettes. And while I'm making those silhouettes, I start thinking, you know what? Maybe I can make faces. Now, one day I'm on the phone with my cousin and she says, "You know what, you should make an art piece for the church that we grew up in." And I said, "Yeah, but I can't present them with a faceless portrait. Faceless, church, they just don't go together." And she said, "We'll make faces." And I said, "Well, I've never made faces before." And she said, "Well, no better time than now." And I told her, "Well, what if I fail?" She's like, "What if you do? Nobody knows you're doing it, but give it a try." Those pastors gave me the confidence to create the pieces that you see today. And that, my friend, is how we got here.